So I thought what I would share this morning is, because Sabbath School is about mission, so I thought, well, what better way to start than to actually share a little bit about the mission of our church here. So I've shared some of this with our leadership in our church, but I thought, well, I should share this with our Sabbath School class as well, and that the mission of our church, as voted in 2018, so this is our Foresters Beach Church, this is before I was even here, is to be this. It's to be a relevant church for all ages, focused on sharing the love of Jesus with the Central Coast. And I love that. And the key words that are there for me is like relevant church, all ages, focused on sharing the love of Jesus for all of the Central Coast. It's like, that's a big job description right there, isn't it? It's like, wow, that's huge. Now, the strategic document that the church voted on in 2018 breaks that mission statement down into 4 key focus areas. Okay, there's going to be a test on this later. So at the end, I'll be testing you on this to make sure that you're paying attention and taking notes. So please pay attention now. So the first one of these is a target group. So who's our target group that we're specifically wanted to focus on? And the first one of those areas is ministry with young families, with youth and young adults. Now, we did say for all ages, right? And we are for all ages, but we wanted to particularly focus on these. Can anyone think of a reason why we'd want to focus on these age groups? They're the future. Yeah, I like the thinking behind that, but actually they're today. I mean, we saw them leading out in church today. So yeah, I love that thinking, Paul, that they're the future of our church is tied up with this. And if we get that bit right, then they will stay and our church will continue to have the future, is I think what you're saying. I love that, yeah. The second area that we wanted to focus on is that we want to have innovative ways to show and to share the love of Jesus. Now, this is in both how we do evangelism and how we run and operate our church. Innovation is, I think, something that's underestimated in our church. And by that, I don't mean Foresters Beach. I mean the Seventh-day Adventist Church generally. I think we need to be innovating more, not less. I see the world is shifting and changing so fast that what we need is to keep thinking about new ways of how we can enter the spaces and how we can share. So innovation really matters, and I love how you thought as a church to have this as one of your key things that you want to make sure we focus on. Innovative ways to show and to share the love of Jesus. And that means that, just down the road we've got a high school. And so, it's like, all right, so what are ways we can actually engage in our community in innovative ways to young families, to youth, to children, so that we can actually reach out and share the love of Jesus with them. Guess what age people are most likely to make a decision for Jesus? Yeah, by around the age of 13. When does our church, not Foresters, but the broader church, where do we focus most of our attention in evangelism? Yeah, adults, post-teens, older generations. And yet when are we most flexible to make changes? When they're young. Oh, see, as a former youth director, I love that. I loved summer camps. I love Pathfinders. I love junior camps, teen camps. I love working with youth at youth camps. Why? Because they're so flexible. They're so keen. They're so willing to do things. And yeah, you can take a group of teens who maybe don't care anything about Jesus, and by the end of a week they're like, yeah, I want to give my life to Jesus, I want to serve him, I want to do these great things. And then we send them back to the churches, and the churches may or may not be taking care of them in that way and not giving them that opportunity to step up and do things. But they're keen, they're willing, and they're able to make those decisions. I love it. Area 3 is we want it to be relevant and engaging. And this is relevant and engaging Sabbath experiences, which means what happens in here during our church service, what happens during Sabbath school, what's happening down the hallway here for our young people. It's like that needs to be relevant. So how do we make something relevant? We've got to enter their world. It's like at that point, we've got to now become missionaries. Because when we send missionaries to a foreign country, what do they have to do? They've got to learn the language. Do our young people have a different language? Yeah, they do, right? And sometimes I get confused by it, but mostly I'm doing okay. But, every now and again it's like, I didn't get that one. Okay, that goes through to the keeper. And then we've got to understand their culture. So not just their language, but their culture, how they do things, how they roll. And when we can do that, then we can enter that space. And as we enter that space, we can then make it engaging and relevant. And so I love the thinking behind that. This is really solid as a church vision statement that we have. And then the fourth area is this, that we want to maximize the use of our church facilities for not just for ourselves, but for the community. And I love the thinking behind this, that we want to somehow rather use this magnificent building that God has blessed us with to actually bless the community in which we live and serve, which means just down the road there's a high school. And I don't know whether you know, but we get school buses do turnarounds here in a car park. I think they wait in a car park for picking up at the high school. I love that. And then we get kids coming after school and skateboarding around in our car park. Grant was the first one to alert me of that, and I'm like, ooh, I like that. And so Grant and I have been doing some thinking around that, and we're like, well, okay, how do we turn that into a ministry? And then how do we actually start attracting some of the high school students to actually things that we might be able to do together with them here in our church facilities, where we might provide after-school care of some kind. And so Grant's been ticking away on that in the background, looking at that as part of his youth focus, is how we can actually do that. But also we can actually fulfill this, maximize the use of our facilities. Now, on top of that, like on Sunday, we'll hire out to other churches so that they can use their facilities on Sunday. So suddenly we're a weekend church. We're open all weekend for people to come and worship. I love the thinking behind that. But even more than that, it's like, well, how can we maximize what we do so we reach into the community? And then the question is this: how can you help? Glad you asked. Such an important question, isn't it? And so here's some things that as I reflected on this, it's like, okay, so here's what I think is some of the key ways in which you can help and engage in this. And the first one is learn the name of at least 5 children or youth and engage with them in conversation every week as a surrogate, doting grandparent, uncle or aunt or something along those lines. Now, who already knows the names of at least 5 children or youth in the church? Not including your own kids, because you might have 5 kids. Okay, I see some hands going up. Okay, that's great. Well, and if you already know 5, how about you stretch yourself and you take that to maybe 10 or something like that. So it's 5 plus is what I'm meaning. There should be a plus sign above the 5. And the idea is that every week that you would look them up and that you would talk with them and you would say, oh, tell me about your week. What's been happening for you? What's going on? Oh, so you had soccer tournament last week. How did that go? Oh, you kicked some goals. Fantastic. Love that. Well, give us a high five now. Off you go. And it's just like, it's not heavy. It's not, but it's engaging and it's actually getting to know and entering their world, just like as if you're an aunt or an uncle. How important is that? Okay, just unpack that for me. Why? Building relationships. In fact, it really does. And it actually, if you think of it this way, every one of us has a thing called a love tank on our back. So just imagine on my back, there's one, those commercial sprayers that people go around spraying the gardens with, and how they run out of water in no time at all, and you've got to fill it up with some more, right? Well, that's the love tank. And the love tank is sitting there, and the love tank is constantly draining out through just living and doing life. And what needs to happen is the love tank needs to be filled up. Who fills up the love tank? Jesus does. Yeah, who else? Families do, and we do. And how do we do that? By taking an interest and showing that we care and getting to know and getting down to someone's level. You know, like some people were amazed at the very first thing I did. I think on the first Sabbath I was here, I played handball with the kids out there in the courtyard. And I think that caused some people to go, oh, the pastor's playing handball on Sabbath. And I'm like, yeah, why wouldn't you? The kids are there, they're playing handball. I want to get to know the kids. Kids really matter. And Paul, you're right, they're the future, but they're the future now. What we do now matters. And so the more we can actually do that first one, the more we're actually significantly, let me say that again. You may be thinking that you're too old to do mission work. Well, let me tell you, if you can love, if you can learn someone's name, then you will be a missionary right here in church. And if you can do that, not just to the children, but to their parents, and get to know their parents and love on them, support them, encourage them, then you really are doing a really great service for helping us fulfill our mission as a church. Now, this next one may not be for everyone because your circumstances may not allow it, but you can encourage others in this, and that is you can invite families with children over to your place for a meal or a simple picnic. And, you know, it doesn't need to be complicated, but it can just be a way to experience hospitality together. What else you can do to help with the mission of church are simple things like this. We often will have guests in our church. So when guests are in our church, what we can actually do with them, and you might bring some guests to church as well, is to give them an invitation to say, all right, come and join our Sabbath school class. I'd love you to be here. We've got a class in here. We've got classes there, class out there. Come and join. We'd love you to share in the reading of the word. Or come and join one of our community groups that meet through the week, or the sewing group, or the Bible reading group, or the games group, or the tennis group, or whatever other group there is. Come and join one of those and bring your friend along with you to that group so that they can experience that too. And that's a way we do mission work. And this is a sort of mission work that will absolutely multiply our effectiveness as a church if we give invitations like that. So imagine if every person who turned up as a guest in our church had 5 or 6 invitations for lunch, had 5 or 6 invitations to a Sabbath school class and to join a community group. You think they might want to come back and think, wow, this is a place that I could call home. This is a place where I could connect and where I could get fed and where I could grow spiritually. And that's how we can really help and plug in here. We can, and the other thing that we can do is actually pray for our families and our young people. If you know 5 names of young people, how about you pray for those 5 young people and pray for their spiritual growth, pray for the protection in their life, pray that God will disturb them so that they don't get hooked into games and porn and other things, but rather they'll be drawn instead to God and to be a godly young person growing up in the faith. Pray for those kinds of things. And then think about the sermon this morning and then take that the next level and dare to ask that they become courageous, great leaders for God who are going to really take the church to the next level. And we can ask God for great things. So let's start asking God for those great things. And let's also remember in our community, we have parents who are doing solo jobs all by themselves. Is that hard? Yeah, it's tough to be there all by yourself. And what do they need? They need adult support. They need love. They need someone who can come and say, hey, I'll take care of your kids for the weekend so you can have a weekend off. They need someone who can say, hey, listen, you need to have a night out where you can just put your feet up. I'll come around and look after your kids for you. Is that going to be difficult? Yeah. Kids are kids, right? My wife's a school teacher. I know a thing or two about kids that they can be really testing. But what a gift to give. So I'm not asking you to do that if you're incapable of. But I think in what I've shared here, there's something that we can all do. Is that right? Is there something that you could do out of that list? And as we do that, we're really going to be stepping up and sharing in the mission of our church. You know, people often say, what's your vision for the church? My vision for this church is that we're a sticky church. That you invite someone here, they experience a relevant message, they experience the love of a Christian community, and they experience the warmth of our hospitality and fellowship, that they just feel like this is home and they want to stay.